What happens when a beloved national treasure meets a host who mistakes arrogance for insight and does it all in under 40 seconds? One careless comment would unravel years of goodwill, expose the rot beneath morning television's polite smiles, and remind millions why true grace can't be faked. Dame Judi Dench stepped onto the bright studio set that Tuesday morning with her familiar warmth. That serene, effortless composure that made generations adore her. She settled into the orange armchair opposite Lorraine Kelly, who greeted her with that well-practiced smile that stopped just short of sincerity. "Dame Judi, welcome back," Lorraine began, leaning forward with a syrupy grin. "You look absolutely radiant this morning." "Thank you, Lorraine," Judi replied with her usual charm, adjusting her navy blazer. Her tone was kind, but steady, dignified. The opening minutes were harmless enough. They chatted about Judi's new film, a small independent piece on aging gracefully. But something in Lorraine's tone felt off. A brittle edge, a glint of something sharper beneath the sweetness. "Now, Dame Judi," Lorraine said suddenly, her voice turning from friendly to faintly patronizing. "At 88, don't you think it might be time to step back from these demanding roles? Surely there are younger actresses who could bring more energy to them." The studio froze. Even the camera operator stopped moving. Judi lifted her eyebrows slightly, calm but unmistakably alert. "I beg your pardon?" she asked, voice quiet but carrying steel beneath the silk. Lorraine chuckled nervously. "I'm just saying, at your age, wouldn't it be nice to slow down a bit? Spend more time with family, perhaps?" Knitting. The air in the studio seemed to thicken. Judi's fingers tightened ever so slightly on the arms of her chair. "Lorraine," she said, her voice now resonant, firm, the voice of 6 decades of theater. "Are you suggesting that age determines talent?" "Oh no, not at all," Lorraine backpedaled, smiling too wide. "I just think perhaps it's time to pass the torch. You know, to step aside gracefully while you still can." A ripple of unease passed through the crew. Even the hum of the air conditioner sounded loud in the silence that followed. Judi's eyes narrowed. Something shifted. The audience could feel it. That quiet, unmistakable moment before the storm. "Step aside gracefully," Judi repeated, voice soft but dangerous. "While I still can?" Lorraine nodded awkwardly. "Well, yes. I mean, the industry's changing, isn't it? Audiences want fresh faces. Young energy, not," she gestured vaguely, "not actors who might forget their lines or need a little help getting around set." That was the breaking point. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Judi's patience evaporated, replaced by something cold and regal. "Forget my lines?" she said, her voice now ringing with quiet authority. "Need help getting around set?" She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Lorraine. "Are you quite serious?" Lorraine tried to recover. "I'm only being practical. We all have to face reality at some point." "Reality?" Judi's voice rose, not in anger but in command. "The reality is that I've been working professionally since before you were born. The reality is that I have more discipline and energy in my little finger than most people half my age have in their entire bodies." Lorraine shifted in her chair, visibly shaken now. For the first time, her polished confidence cracked. "Now, Dame Judi, I didn't mean to offend." "Oh, but you did," Judi interrupted, holding up one graceful hand. Her tone was calm, devastatingly calm. "You brought me here not to discuss my work, but to imply I should shuffle quietly into the background, because you think age makes me irrelevant." The cameras kept rolling. Every word, every gesture, every second of this extraordinary moment was captured. "That's not what I said," Lorraine muttered weakly. "Isn't it?" Judi countered. "You told me to step aside. You implied I'd forget my lines. You even suggested knitting. Tell me, Lorraine, what exactly did you mean?" Lorraine's eyes darted off camera toward her producers, but they were frozen in place, entranced by the unfolding drama. I was just trying to have an honest conversation about aging in Hollywood. Lorraine stammered. Honest? Judi repeated. Her voice filled the studio, commanding, theatrical, unignorable. There's nothing honest about equating age with incompetence. Nothing honest about treating experience as a burden instead of a gift. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the light seemed to hum more quietly, and in that stillness, one thing became unmistakably clear. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a reckoning. Lorraine sat frozen. For the first time all morning, she seemed to grasp what she had unleashed. Something far larger, far older, and far more commanding than she could ever control. Judi leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady, her voice low and devastatingly calm. Let me share some honesty with you, my dear. I have performed for royalty. I've worked with the finest directors across generations. I've earned every accolade this profession has to offer. And you? She paused, letting the silence stretch. You think I should take up knitting? The single word, knitting, dripped with such disdain that it seemed to echo across the studio walls. Dame Judi, please, Lorraine stammered. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Judi interrupted, rising slowly from her chair with the unhurried grace of a queen, is your belief that age entitles you to patronize those who have accomplished more in one lifetime than you could in 3. The cameras followed her as she stood, capturing that unmistakable moment when Dame Judi Dench decided she had heard enough. Lorraine's eyes widened in panic. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not live. But it was. Dame Judi, please sit down, Lorraine pleaded, her voice cracking under the weight of the silence. We can discuss this like adults. Like adults? Judi turned, and the look she gave could have frozen fire. You mean the way you discussed my career? By implying I'm too decrepit to remember my lines? I never said decrepit, Lorraine protested weakly. You didn't need to, Judi replied, her voice carrying the full resonance of her years on stage. Your meaning was perfectly clear. You believe that because I have lived longer and achieved more than most ever will, I am somehow less capable, less relevant, less worthy of respect. The audience sat in stunned silence. They had come expecting charm and laughter, a cozy chat over tea. Instead, they were witnessing the dissection of morning television's fake civility, one elegant sentence at a time. Look, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot, Lorraine said, forcing that brittle smile back onto her face. Why don't we start over? Talk about your wonderful career, your incredible achievements. Judi's laugh was sharp, humorless, the sound of patience snapping. Now you want to talk about my achievements? After spending the last several minutes suggesting I should retire because I'm past my prime? I was just asking legitimate questions about the industry, Lorraine insisted, though her voice was barely holding together. Legitimate questions? Judi repeated, her voice rising like a storm about to break. Tell me, Lorraine, when was the last time you asked a male actor my age whether he should step aside for younger talent? When did you last suggest Ian McKellen should take up gardening instead of acting? The question landed like a thunderclap. Everyone in the studio felt it, the double standard exposed, raw and undeniable. Lorraine opened and closed her mouth soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. That's different, she managed. Different? Judi pressed, taking a step closer. How exactly? Because I'm a woman? Because you think women of a certain age should fade quietly into the background, while men are celebrated for their longevity? No, that's not what I meant," Lorraine began, but even she didn't believe her own defense. "Then what did you mean?" Judi demanded, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Because from where I'm standing, it sounds as though you invited me here to humiliate me, to imply that everything I've built, everything I've earned, counts for nothing because I've had the audacity to age." Behind the cameras, the production crew was in chaos. Frantic hand signals, whispered debates, desperate gestures to cut to commercial. But no one dared interrupt. The moment had taken on a life of its own. "This isn't about one interview," the narrator might have said later. "This was about respect, about dignity, about how society treats the women who have earned both." "Dame Judi, you're twisting my words," Lorraine said finally, her voice cracking under the weight of her own guilt. "Am I?" Judi asked quietly. "Let me remind you exactly what you said." She lifted a finger, quoting with perfect precision. "At your age, shouldn't you be thinking about retirement? Spending time with grandchildren? Knitting, perhaps?" She let the words hang, in the air, each syllable a mirror Lorraine could not bear to look into. "Does that sound twisted to you?" Judi asked. Lorraine's face flushed crimson. Hearing her own words thrown back at her, word for word, was unbearable. "I was only suggesting there might be other fulfilling ways to spend your time," she said weakly. "Other fulfilling ways," Judi repeated almost to herself. "More fulfilling than the work I love, more fulfilling than continuing to challenge myself, than mentoring young actors who actually want to learn." "Well, no, but nothing," Judi cut her off sharply. "You made assumptions about what I should want, what I should be, based solely on my age. You decided without knowing a single thing about my health, my drive, or my passion, that I should quietly fade away." The silence that followed was long, suffocating, absolute. Lorraine looked around the studio, to the crew, to the cameras, to the stunned audience, as if begging for rescue. None came. "I think perhaps we should take a commercial break," she said, her voice trembling. "Oh no," Judi said, her tone suddenly soft but immovable. "We're going to finish this conversation, right here, right now. You wanted to talk about aging in the industry." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that dangerous calm that silenced everyone within earshot. "Then let's talk about it properly." Lorraine visibly swallowed. She had unleashed something she couldn't control, and now she had to face the consequences. "The truth is, Lorraine," Judi said, her voice steady but razor-sharp, "your attitude represents everything that's wrong with how we treat experience and wisdom in this country. You see wrinkles and assume incompetence. You see age and assume irrelevance. You see a lifetime of achievement and suggest it's time to step aside." "That's not fair," Lorraine protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Judi countered. "Then explain to me why you thought it was appropriate to suggest that I, someone who has been acting professionally longer than you've been alive, should consider retirement, while younger, less experienced actors take my place." Lorraine had no answer. The question hung in the air like an accusation. "The fact is," Judi went on, "you didn't bring me here because you respect my work or value my contribution to the arts. You brought me here because you thought you could score easy points by patronizing a senior citizen on live television." "That's absolutely not true," Lorraine said, but her voice had lost all conviction. "Then why?" Judi asked, her voice suddenly quiet but dangerous. "Did every one of your questions focus on my age instead of my craft? Why did you suggest knitting instead of asking about my current projects? Why did you assume that being 88 means I'm ready to be put out to pasture?" Each question landed like an arrow, finding its mark. Lorraine sat frozen. There was no defense, because Judi was right. "I see I'm not going to get a real answer," Judi said finally, straightening her blazer with slow, deliberate grace, "which tells me everything I need to know about your intentions and your character." She turned toward the studio exit, head high, every movement charged with dignity. Lorraine sat motionless under the bright studio lights, finally realizing the magnitude of what she'd done. The sharp click of Judi's heels echoed through the silence. Measured, controlled, and devastating. But then Lorraine made her fatal mistake. "Dame Judi, wait!" she called out, her voice cracking. "Surely you're being a bit dramatic about this whole thing." Judi stopped. Slowly, very slowly, she turned back. The look on her face could have withered flowers. "Dramatic," she repeated, her tone now calm in a way that was far more frightening than anger. "You think I'm being dramatic?" "Well, yes," Lorraine said, still not realizing she was digging her own grave. "I mean, we were just having a conversation about your career. There's no need to storm off like this." The audacity of it hit the studio like a physical shockwave. Even the camera operators froze. "Just a conversation?" Judi repeated, taking a slow step forward. "Is that what you call systematically insulting a guest on your own show?" "I wasn't insulting you," Lorraine insisted, her voice shrinking with every word. "You told me to retire because of my age. You suggested I take up knitting. You implied I might forget my lines. You said younger actresses could bring more energy to roles. And now you're calling me dramatic for objecting to your condescension?" Each word struck like a hammer. Lorraine seemed to collapse into herself. "Those weren't insults," she murmured. "They were just observations." "Observations?" Judi's voice rose, filling every inch of the studio. "Let me share some observations with you, my dear." She took a step closer, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You are a television presenter who has built a career on being pleasant and inoffensive. You have never won an Oscar, a BAFTA, a Tony, or an Olivier. You have never been made a Dame of the British Empire for services to drama. You have never performed for the Queen. And yet, you have the unmitigated gall to suggest that I should step aside." The silence that followed was absolute. Lorraine looked like she might disappear into her chair. "But you're questioning my professional judgment," Judi continued, her tone now measured, surgical. "When your greatest achievement is reading a script every morning, you dare to suggest that I lack the energy for demanding roles, while I've been performing 8 shows a week on the West End, while you sit behind a desk asking celebrities about their favorite recipes. It was brutal, elegant, and final. Everyone in the studio knew they were witnessing something that would be remembered for years." "Dame Judi, please," Lorraine whispered. "I never meant any disrespect." "But that's exactly what you showed," Judi replied, her voice now carrying the full weight of her legacy. "From the moment I sat down, you treated me not as an accomplished professional, but as a quaint old woman who should be grateful for your attention." "That's not true," Lorraine said softly, though even she didn't sound convinced. "Isn't it?" Judi asked, and with that she turned and walked away. Every step a masterclass in grace, power, and control, leaving Lorraine alone, blinking under the relentless studio lights, finally realizing that she had just committed career suicide on live television. "Then why didn't you ask me about my technique?" Judi's voice was calm but cutting. "About my approach to different roles? About what I've learned from working with some of the greatest directors and actors of multiple generations? Why instead did you leap straight to questions about retirement and knitting?" Lorraine had no answer, because there was no good answer. Her silence said it all. Every assumption she'd made, every quiet prejudice she thought she'd hidden behind a smile, now lay exposed for all to see. "The truth is, Lorraine," Judi continued, her tone carrying the weight of decades of mastery, You don't actually respect experience or wisdom. You see them as obstacles to be moved aside, rather than treasures to be valued. You think youth and energy are more important than skill and knowledge. I do respect your achievements, Lorraine said quickly, desperation cracking through her voice. Do you? Judi challenged. Because nothing about this interview suggests that. Nothing in your questions, nothing in your tone, nothing in your approach has shown even the slightest respect for what I've accomplished, or what I continue to contribute. She paused, the silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Then, with perfect composure, Judi delivered what would become the most quoted line of the entire encounter. You invited Dame Judi Dench onto your show, Lorraine. But what you wanted was a doddering old woman who would smile sweetly while you patronized her. Unfortunately for you, I am not that woman, and I never will be. The silence that followed was total. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop. Judi adjusted her blazer one final time, lifted her chin, and turned her gaze directly to the main camera. Her voice softened, but every word carried power. To anyone watching who believes that age means accepting disrespect or lowering your expectations, let me tell you something. Your experience matters. Your knowledge matters. Your continued contributions matter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She turned back to Lorraine, her tone cool and unshakable. And as for you, my dear, perhaps you should spend some time reflecting on why you thought this approach was appropriate. A pause. A small, dignified smile. Good day. With that, Dame Judi Dench turned and walked off the set, head high, her heels striking the studio floor like punctuation marks. Behind her, Lorraine sat frozen beneath the blinding lights, humiliated, hollow, and very suddenly aware that she had just destroyed her own credibility on live television. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the wreckage of what was meant to be a cheerful morning interview, and had become a career-ending confrontation. She had challenged a true professional. She had underestimated a living legend, and she had been found, completely and irrevocably, wanting. The clip would be replayed for years, analyzed, mimed, dissected. The day Lorraine patronized Dame Judi Dench and learned exactly why she was a dame in the first place.